Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's session. Today, we are excited to reflect on how DMARC enforcement has evolved in 2025, what that reveals about the current state of email authentication, and explore how organizations can move beyond basic compliance to robust protocol-based email security. So, you know who's speaking to you today. My name is Francesca, and I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Redsift. And I'm joined by Billy. Billy, do you just want to give a quick introduction?
Thank you, Fran. Yes, hello everyone. Good to see you all again. I'm the VP of Customer Engineering here at Redsift. So really delighted that you've all been able to join us for as this should be an interesting session, I think, today, Fran. So be interesting to see what feedback and what questions people that have managed to join us actually come up with.
Definitely. Okay, so as I've kind of already alluded to, we're going to kick off by just having a quick look at the state of email security today. And then the nitty-gritty of this presentation really looks at the core protocols. So that's SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Billy will be explaining what they are and how they work. And then we'll be looking at some of the more advanced protocols, including MTA, STS, and BIMI. And then also we'll have some time for Q&As. Before we get started, Billy and I do like to share who we work for and what makes us qualified to talk about this subject. Well, Redsift is a global cybersecurity company, and we exist to create a fundamentally safer internet. We do this through our suite of applications that span email, web, and PKI, and over 1,200 security teams trust us with their security, including some really big name brands like TUI, Cisco, Domino's Pizza, and Wise. And our bread and butter is a DMARC application, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so let's get into things. If you have a look at this graph, you will see that since the introduction of bulk sender requirements from Google, Yahoo, and most recently Microsoft, we have seen a significant uptick in DMARC adoption. In just 18 months, or just over 18 months, the number of domains with DMARC records has jumped from around 8 million in January 2024 to almost 15 million today. So that's a huge leap, and it shows us that mandates really move the needle.
And it's
But
why we're so busy as well.
yes, but what this graph doesn't tell you, unless you look closely, and where we really need to ask a deeper question, is well, how many of these domains are actually enforcing protection? Because while reporting adoption here is high, enforcement is still extremely low, with less than 5% of the world's domains using DMARC at enforcement levels like quarantine or reject. One of the reasons for this is that Yahoo Soft, so that's Yahoo, Google, and Microsoft, have mandated only a policy of P equals none or reporting for now, which we obviously hope is going to become stricter. We'll get into all things policies in a couple of slides so you can understand what we mean when we refer to when we say reporting, quarantine, and reject. But first, we'd like to explore a little bit why teams aren't reaching enforcement. So when we talk to prospects about their concerns when it comes to DMARC, we kind of have identified three key roadblocks. The first one is deliverability. We find that some teams have actually already tried to install or implement, I should say, DMARC previously, but have maybe done it too quickly, and then legitimate mail starts bouncing. And obviously, this is a huge business risk. This is what happens when you jump straight to reject without first understanding all of your sending sources. But with the right approach, you can phase in policies, you can test, and you can avoid downtime. So, really, deliverability shouldn't be a concern. The second roadblock is reporting without enforcement. So if we go back to the graph that we've just seen, all of those domains, or the majority of those domains, are in a policy of none. Teams set DMARC to none and feel safe because they're getting reports. But the reality is that actually this policy does nothing to stop spoofing. It just gives you visibility. And enforcement is the step that really truly protects your domain. Lastly, The third roadblock is relying on a secure email gateway or a SEG. Many SEG providers do bolt on DMARC, but it's more of an afterthought, and this makes DMARC implementation complex, manual, and difficult to manage at scale. So those are kind of the three key things that we see. And you may be familiar with who Gartner is. We work closely with Gartner and their analysts, and we were very delighted that very recently in August 2025, they released this report on how to develop an email security strategy. And Gartner is really clear. Most organizations still misunderstand how to protect their email. There's a standout stat in this report. Fewer than 10% of domains have DMARC in place, despite it being the baseline for validating corporate email identity. So their guidance is straightforward. First, you should adopt zero trust principles like DMARC, encryption, and MFA. Those are just some of the examples in that report. And secondly, you should make sure that your vendors actually integrate so that you're not stuck doing detection engineering yourself. If you'd like to read this report in full, we will send you a link to it as part of our follow-up after this session. It's really quite interesting, so definitely worth a read. What's music to our ears is the acknowledgement here that Billy, well, sorry, Billy, it's not you, it's DMARC. DMARC needs to be the foundation of an organization's email security strategy.
I mean,
So,
I can be the foundation of an organization's email security if you want, Fran. That's fine. It's what we
gosh,
do every day, right? You know.
that's right. So I'm without further ado, Billy, why don't you take it away and talk to us about these protocols?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying I'm going to be the foundation of your email security today, everyone. Fran did, but what we're going to do today is for those where DMARC might be a little bit new to you, explain a little bit about it, about why it's important, and about all the bits that actually come together. Now, bear with me. There is a bit of acronym soup here, okay, but we'll try and make it as easy for those that aren't familiar with them to understand as possible, okay? But there will be a lot of SMTPs and DMARCs and MTASTSs that we'll throw about, but we'll explain everything as we go. First acronym of the day, DMARC. We're so used to saying DMARC, we sometimes don't think about what it actually stands for and what it actually is. DMARC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting and Conformance. Catchy. It's an outbound email security standard that helps organizations protect their brand, their employees, their customers from impersonation, but also your shareholders, your value, your equity, your supply chain. Okay, this is about, remember why we do this in the first place. This is about protecting your brand and everything that belongs to it. In simple terms, what does DMARC do? It tells the receiving email server what to do when a potentially suspicious message claims to come from your domain. Okay, so this is exact impersonation spoofing we're talking about here. This is when someone tries to impersonate at redshift.io, for example, what actually happens. And what DMARC does is, with a strict policy when it's used, those spoofed emails can be rejected before they ever reach the inbox of your staff, of your customers, of your supply chain. Okay. Now, the need for this goes back to 2008. I think most of us, or a lot of us, were either in our early careers in security. At that point, I had just actually started in security. At that point, I was trying to make sure that the server room door was securely locked in the company that I worked for. But the need goes back to then, when the network working group declared the SMTP, the protocol that email runs on, inherently insecure. They warned that anyone could impersonate a domain, okay, to send fraudulent emails. And in response, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, and others launched DMARC in 2012 to give domain owners visibility and control, and to stop unauthenticated senders who shouldn't be sending from your domain in their tracks. So that is what DMARC is and where it came from. But why does it actually matter today? Well, Fran has started to talk about Gartner, and Gartner positions DMARC now as the foundation of your phishing defense. That's really important here. It's the first layer in a multi-layered approach to email security. I was talking to someone in the team about this the other day. I like Gartner's funnel, okay, but I think about it like a game of Jenga, okay, all right. If you DMARC isn't holding that bottom Jenga piece in the bottom, the Jenga tower is actually going to fall over, okay. So if you don't have it, okay, nothing else above it is actually going to be secure. By not cutting off those most damaging attacks, those exact domain spoofing before they even hit the inbox, okay, you're going to have a problem. But by cutting off those spray and pray campaigns at the beginning of the funnel, you free up your secure email gateway, your SEG, your account takeover protection, your awareness training that you give staff. You free those up to focus on what are the more advanced threats. Okay, so your awareness training, for example, can focus on social engineering. Okay, your account takeover protection can focus on lookalike domains, which is obviously served by our brand trust product as well. Okay, so by automating this, and that's important, Fran touched on it in her introduction, you should be working with vendors and working with suppliers who can help you to automate this stuff. Take away the pain from actually implementing it and doing it so you can focus on what is more complicated. Without putting DMARC in place, if you don't do it, everything else is harder. Okay, every other layer has to do something a bit more different. And the more work that's required, the less automation that's in place, the easier it is for an attacker to get in through your email. Remember though, DMARC isn't just about security. By authenticating your legitimate email, your marketing guys are also going to love you, okay? You will also improve deliverability. More of your messages will land in the inbox with higher open rates, stronger engagement, giving a clear boost to marketing ROI. So, security folk on the call, get your marketing people to pay for a proper DMARC implementation. Work together on this, and we'll talk about something else that's cool that your marketing people are going to love in just a moment. So how does DMARC actually work in practice? There's three main building blocks in DMARC. The DMARC policy itself, sender protection framework, SPF, and the main key identified mail, DKIM. So let's start with what the overall flow actually looks like. When an email arrives, the receiving server checks whether the sender is authorized to use the from domain. To do that, it looks at the results of the two underlying authentication methods, SPF, which checks whether the sending server is allowed, and DKIM, which checks the integrity of the message with a digital signature. And I'll talk more about those two protocols in a moment. DMARC then applies two rules. First, at least one of those checks has to pass. Okay. Second, the domain in the passing check has to align with the domain and the visible from address. So this is where we talk about authentication and we talk about alignment. Okay, so there's two different types of checks there. If neither passes an alignment, the message fails DMARC. At that point, the receiving server applies the DMARC policy that's been configured in the DNS that you, the domain owner, has actually set. Okay, but if alignment is satisfied, then the email is delivered normally. The DMARC policy is the part here which decides what actually happens. Does anything happen, i.e. a policy of none? Is the message quarantined, i.e. does it go into your spam? Or is the message rejected? Now, let's talk about DMARC itself and the DMARC policy in a little bit more detail, as it is the first building block. Because DMARC ultimately, and the result of it, ultimately comes down to the policy that you publish. And there were three options here. Although if you're doing DMARC properly and starting to progress, you want to be moving to reject as safely and as quickly as possible. The first is P equals none. This is monitoring only. This means that every email will still get delivered. Now you're collecting the reports that show which domains are sending on your, which sending sources are sending on your behalf and whether they're passing authentication, but no action is taken. Okay, so if anything fails those checks that we're talking about, okay, the email will still get delivered into the inbox. Next is quarantine. Think about this as a test mode. Messages that fail authentication are diverted to your spam folder, and it gives you a safety net. Okay, it means as you're progressing through DMARC deployment, you can see what the impact is without risking your legitimate sending sources completely. And there are other settings here, guys, okay, that we will use and you can use during your projects to give you more safety in terms of the level, okay, of enforcement that takes place. And then the final part is reject. This is your full enforcement, okay? This is where messages that fail authentication are completely blocked outright and never make it into the recipient's inbox. Now, a question I hear a lot, doesn't DMARC mean that some of our legitimate email might get blocked? Okay, and the answer is no, as long as you implement it correctly. DMARC was deliberately designed to make sure that you could safely get into a position where your legitimate email wouldn't be blocked. Now, you have to do it correctly. You have to do it properly. You start at P equals none, that reporting only mode, to gather the evidence that you need, the data that you need, the telemetry that you need to figure out which sending sources are correctly configured and which aren't correctly configured. And you don't start moving to quarantine and then ultimately reject until you're happy and you're satisfied that those sending sources have actually been configured correctly. And you're confident that everything that's a legitimate sending source has been correctly accounted for. Okay. And this is where Redshift and our team really come into play. We've got decades of experience in our team of implementing projects without risking legitimate email. The next building block is SPF, or Sender Policy Framework. SPF is about verifying which email servers are actually authorized to send on behalf of your domain. You publish an SPF record in DNS, which works like a list of approved senders. When an email arrives, the receiving mail server will ask, is this sending server's IP address included? Is it? If it passes, if it's a yes, it passes. If not, then SPF fails. Now, on its own, okay, it just gives a pass or fail result. Attackers can still exploit the from field to make emails look like they come from you in your organization. But when SPF is combined with DMARC and alignment is enforced, it becomes a really powerful way to stop unauthorized servers from sending on your behalf. And then when you combine it with the final building block, DKIM, the domain keys identified mail, it becomes even stronger. DKIM focuses on verifying the integrity and authenticity of an email. So when a message is sent, the sending server attaches a digital signature that's created with a private key. The receiving server then looks up the corresponding public key, which is published in your DNS. And it uses that check to check whether the signature matches the headers and content. If the signature matches, brilliant. It proves that the message wasn't altered in transit and that the signing domain took responsibility for it. If the signature doesn't match, then DKIM fails. So SPF verifies who is allowed to send. DKIM verifies that the message hasn't been tampered with and was signed by the correct domain. So together, SPF and DKIM provide a foundation DMARC will then enforce on top of that and wraps it all together in one place. So those are the basic protocols. Now, additionally, there are other protocols available, one of which is directly related to DMARC, one of which isn't, which will help you further. So this is where you start to improve your email security maturity at the start of the Gartner funnel. Okay, so once you've started to progress towards quarantine and to reject, you want to start thinking about other protocols and how those can actually be used. First of all, you have MTA STS. That one really does roll off the tongue. Mail transfer agent strict transport security protects email while it's in transit between servers. Normally, SMTP connections could be forced into weaker encryption through a downgrade attack, and MTA STS helps protect against that. Your domain publishes a policy in DNS and then tells sending servers always to use encryption when delivering email to my domain and only connect to the servers that I've authorized. Okay, if it doesn't meet those requirements, it will refuse delivery. Okay, so in other words, MTSTS prevents attackers from stripping away encryption and ensures that messages sent remain private while in transit. And with on DMARC, we have MTS built in to the platform, meaning that people can deploy all of the moving parts of MTSTS as part of their on DMARC project. And then next, we have BIMI. Now, BIMI does have a dependency on DMARC. Okay, you do need to be in quarantine or reject to use BIMI. And BIMI's a little bit different. This is what I said earlier, your marketers are going to love, okay? Because BIMI is about building trust and recognition in the inbox. Once you've implemented DMARC enforcement at either quarantine or reject, you can publish BIMI, you can use it, and that allows your verified logo to be displayed next to your emails in an inbox. Okay. So for recipients, BIMI is a great visual signal. Okay. It means that it really is from your brand. And we've got case studies on our website like Domino's Pizza, okay, who talk about how important BIMI is. It's a particularly useful protocol for business to consumer organizations. It's a security win, but it's also a marketing win because it reduces the risk of impersonation because you've had to get to quarantine and reject to get there, okay, whilst also boosting brand visibility. BIMI improves open rates, it improves click-throughs, delivers measurable gains in engagement and marketing return on investment, especially, as I said, for those consumer-facing brands. Until recently, BIMI adoption was slowed a little bit, okay? And that's because there was a requirement to have a trademarked logo, okay? Now that barrier has now been lowered with the introduction of a new type of certificate. So up until now, you had to have something called a verified mark certificate, a VMC. But recently, there's now a thing called common mark certificates. Any organization can now actually implement and deploy BIMI as long as their logo has been in use for at least 12 months. Okay, so no longer have you got that barrier where you need a trademark. As long as you've been using your logo for 12 months, as long as you're at quarantine and reject, then you can consider BIMI, and we highly recommend that you do that. So I've spoken about DMARC, I've spoken about what it is, I've spoken about why it's important. We've broken down the key component parts, both in terms of the basic parts of the protocol, but also the more advanced parts that you can add on MTSTS, BIMI, as you start to mature in your security journey, your email security journey. Now, I've touched on it throughout, but with Redshift on DMARC, everything that I've spoken about today is available to our customers all in one place. You can be in complete control of all of these protocols that I've spoken about and more from one single pane of glass. You can defend yourself against domain takeovers. You can simplify the management of these complex protocols, SPF, DKIM, MTSTS, and BIMI. You can stand out in the inbox with BIMI. And what is even more important in some cases, in a lot of cases actually, more important than the technology, is that you've got the backup of a team of real experts, okay, who who can give you the fastest path to enforcement, but also the safest path to enforcement. Okay, and that's really important. You have to be pragmatic when you're deploying DMARC, when you're undertaking a DMARC project. And to do that, it's best to work with a team who really know what they're doing, who can give you advice on a complicated sender, what configuration is actually required. We've seen the vast majority of senders out there. We know what the configuration should look like. Okay. But importantly as well, we're giving you visibility of things that might be a surprise to you through on DMARC. We're telling you who is actually spoofing your campaign, your email domains. So our team will be able to tell you whether a campaign looks like it's something that you should be worrying about and taking further action against as well. Okay. It's award-winning cloud-based DMARC, DKIM, SPF, and MTA STS configuration and management all in one place. Back over to you, Fran.
Thank you, Billy, for that whistle-stop tour through the protocols. For anyone who wants maybe some light evening reading, if you go to our resource center, we have a selection of guides, and we break down the protocols in quite a few of them actually, but the email security guide is one to have a look at if that is of interest. Okay, so to kind of wrap things up, we have put together this DMARC maturity scale internally. This is what we like to talk to our prospects and our customers about. So you would think of DMARC not just as a checkbox, but as a maturity journey. It starts with the basics, as Billy's alluded to. You put reporting in place so you can see who's sending on your behalf. From there, you configure all of your sending sources, and then you move to enforcement across your domains and your subdomains, and that's where you really start to block spoofed emails. Once you've reached enforcement, you can level up with advanced protocols like BIMI and MTSDS, which both strengthen security and build brand trust. And then at the very top of our maturity scale, you're not only stopping exact impersonation, but you're also tackling more advanced threats like subdomailing and lookalike attacks that can lead to business email compromise. So the idea is step by step, you can move from visibility to enforcement to true resilience against the full spectrum of email-based threats. Now, just quickly, I've just mentioned subdomailing and lookalike attacks. Those are two subjects or topics that Billy and I are going to be covering in our next webinar. So today was kind of aimed at those who are getting started with their email security journey, looking to understand more about DMARC and the protocols. And this next topic will layer on what should come beyond DMARC. So if you're interested, keep an eye on our website and you can sign up to webinars from there. And then a takeaway from today is if you are interested in checking your email security setup, having a look at what's going on with your configuration, you can just go to redshift.com/investigate. It's our free tool, and in less than 30 seconds, you'll get a comprehensive breakdown of what's going on with your email, with your sending sources. So you just need to go to this URL. You'll send an email to a unique email address, and then the tool will analyze your setup in real time, and you'll get those results in a matter of seconds. So well worth doing. Okay, I think we have some questions, Billy. So let me have a look. We've got a
Mm.
few on BIMI. Um, if you get BIMI via using the logo for 12 months, what happens if you want to change it another 12 months? Question mark.
Great question. So when it comes to VMCs are issued for a year at a time. That certificate is tied to your logo that was verified when you applied at the first time. Okay, so after 12 months, the certificate must be renewed, and you can change the logo at that point if you've got, and you need to obviously be able to show your new trademark at that point. If you want to change to a new logo before the 12 months, you'll need to request a new VMC with the updated logo. Okay, so it can't just simply be amended. So you're buying a new certificate, and that resets the 12-month period. Okay.
Great. And then we have another one on BIMI. What size company, email volume, or revenue makes BIMI cost effective? I have just a quick anecdote I can jump in with here, Billy. Maybe you've got one as well. But
Yeah.
um, as the product marketer at Redshift, I look after customer advocacy. So I speak with our customers about their journeys with us, and BIMI is one of the key topics that we cover. And actually, we have two examples on our website that you could have a look at, two very different sized companies. One is Talify, they are a small SaaS company, and the other is TalkTalk. And so, for those of you who are UK based, you'll know they're a huge telecommunications company here in the UK. And both of these companies have BIMI set up and have reported um, great results. I think TalkTalk quoted 4 to 6% increase in their either click-through rates or open rates. I can't remember off the top of my head. And the same for Talify. They had a huge number of increases in their click-through rates for their transactional mail. So it really does pay off for companies of all shapes and sizes. We also did a study in collaboration with one of the certificate authorities a couple of years back, that you can have a look at also on our website, which dives into um, who BIMI pays off for. Anything that you would add to that, Billy?
No, I think you've covered it in one, and I think it, as adoption becomes more widespread, your customers are going to become more aware, and they'll be honest. There will be an expectation that your logo will appear in the inbox. Okay, so the way I sometimes talk about it is if you go onto your company's Instagram page or your company's Facebook page, if your logo didn't appear there, then customers wouldn't trust that page, quite rightly. I don't think we're too far away, okay, from that being the case with BIMI, where customers, although they don't know what BIMI actually is, they will come to expect to see your logo in the inbox. And actually, for some of our plans, we wrap up. There is a little slight additional cost to buy the certificate that's needed for this. For some of our plans, we do build some of the cost into it, and you can talk to us about that. So I think for certainly now it's becoming, because adoption is becoming more important, it should be something that you should be doing no matter what size of company that you actually are. And it's particularly important. The other trend here is that the reality is that whether even in personal email, strict authentication, like Fran said, it is now mandated. We're going to be in a situation where uh, it'll be mandated for corporate email servers as well. So anyone running, so Microsoft running Office 365, Google running Google Workspace, they'll mandate it soon. And there's no reason not to do BIMI, because you will be working, you'll be at quarantine or reject. So I think it's one of these things, you get enough benefit at a low cost, it will be expected, and there's no reason not to do it moving forward.
Super. We have one more question, Billy, and then I think we do need to wrap up.
Yeah.
Anyone who's asked a question in the chat that we haven't gotten back to, we'll send you an email. But the last one we've got comes back to the beginning of today's presentation. So, how do you see regulatory or industry driven requirements evolving for email?
It's a great question, and partly answered it in my first answer, which is, the expectation would be that the corporate versions of, so Office 365, um, Google Workspace, they will start to mandate strict authentication. We don't have any timelines for it, but there's no reason to think why not. And you're also seeing other providers start to join the party. So La Poste in France, and forgive my terrible French accent there, but they're starting to mandate it now as well. So that's going to be a big driver. Additionally, though, DMARC is becoming a named protocol in a number of different pieces of guidance, framework, and regulation, which is partly why Gartner have acknowledged it and realized that, yeah,
Mhm.
actually this has to be the foundation of what you actually do. So whether it's PCI DSS 4.0.1 this year, okay, it didn't specifically state it as a requirement, but it recommended that people do use DMARC as a way of protecting themselves against enforcement. The controls in HIPAA, for our healthcare people that have joined us today, effectively, the only way that you're able to protect yourself against these exact impersonation spoofing attempts is by using DMARC. So this is going to drive compliance as we move forward. So both a combination of the industry, but also the frameworks and regulation that are in place really means that DMARC is no longer optional for the majority of organizations in the majority of geographies.
Great stuff. Thank you, Billy and Alex, Samuel, and Tony. We will send you an email. Thank you very much to everyone for joining. Like I said at the beginning of this prezo, we will be sending a follow-up email with the Gartner report, and we look forward to welcoming you in our next webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.